Hello, everybody. It is Monday, January 25th, 2021. It is 9:18 a.m., and this is the bi-weekly sync of the Inclusive Naming Initiative. I am Celeste Horgan. I am the host for this call, and it looks like Stephen is very kindly taking notes. So thank you very, very much. Priyanka cannot join us today. She has a conflict with an LF planning meeting. Um, okay. As Stephen mentioned, the link to the agenda is in the chat. Please add yourself as an attendee. And if you have any agenda items, please add them to the agenda. And with that, Stephen, you want to take it away with some PSAs?
Hi. Yeah, so quick PSAs. First off, do we have officially documented code of conduct somewhere? Anyhow, this is a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet, so please be mindful of what you say and do. Please be sure to adhere to a code of conduct that is be awesome to everyone that is on this call. And more soon, I guess. Yeah, so for PSAs, last week I was setting up the Slack channel. So we have a Slack instance right now. It's not Slack channel, but Slack instance. And I got some feedback that people had some problems signing in because it's been a while since I've done Slack admin stuff. So I set up an inviter, communityinviter.com. The link is in the meeting notes. So basically what happens with that inviter is you request an invite, it gets sent to myself and the admin team. We go to a dashboard and approve your invite. So the reason we're doing this is a contentious topic for people for some reason, and yeah, and it's prone to not fun experiences. So we want to make sure that the Slack instance is as productive and safe for people as possible. So it is additionally moderated. Also note if you do join the Slack instance, that two-factor authentication is required. So please set that up soon after logging into the Slack, or you will get booted. Any questions on that stuff?
Stephen, just a quick question. This is Andre. So we're not going to use the Google Groups discussion because I see traffic coming from both channels. Are we going to move it to really Slack as the main place where we're going to have those discussions?
So So I think that everyone is going to work a little differently. So as we talk about the work streams, we'll talk about best ways to communicate as well.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So if we leave it up for the work streams to handle, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So speaking of, next PSA is to express interest in a work stream. Lots of you have already dropped notes of interest on the GitHub discussion. If you have not already, please take a moment to click that link in the meeting notes and do so. We are getting to the point where you'll see in the recurring topics and open discussion that we want to start really kicking these work streams off in earnest, which means one, finding people who are interested in working on the specific work streams, and two, finding people who are interested and available to lead those work streams. So we have a few people who have already volunteered to lead specific work streams, myself, Celeste included, Bill, who is on this call for marketing. I won't rattle off all the names, but they are on the issue. So once we get a little bit more feedback, I'm going to I will send an email to the group this week that kind of aggregates who is interested and where, and set you off on your ways to start discussing in earnest, right? So any questions on that?
I have one question, which is what remains, what work streams still need a lead?
Great question. Don't have the answer yet. I will re-review. I feel like the only one that might be remaining is maybe intake, but I might be wrong, and Carla might have expressed interest in leading that one.
No, I think Carla wanted to switch. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that is correct. I'd like to be in language. I'm a terminologist. I want to work with the terms.
I think
Perfect.
that's very
Perfect.
very legitimate.
So again, for anyone who is interested and wants to switch, move, lead, all that stuff, please bring all of the discussion to the GitHub issue so it's easy for me to aggregate all of that before I send out the email.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And the GitHub issue, I'm just going to drop the link in the chat just in case you did not see it.
Cool.
Okay.
The last one is that we are going to be presenting this week at the Maintainer Circle. So if you're not familiar with Maintainer Circle, it is we call it a sub-project, we call it a working group. It's kind of an entity, right? That was thought up by the CNCF SIG contributor strategy. And so I'm one of the leads for CNCF SIG contributor strategy. And basically what we do is we assist all of the wonderful projects that exist in the CNCF ecosystem with being a project, right? So kind of assessing all of the questions that you might have about governance, about bringing on new contributors, about talking about just maintainer problems, right? So our last Maintainer Circle session, the idea is that we propose a topic, some expert comes in and talks about that topic, or someone versed in that space. So the last one that we did was on burnout. A lot of fun there. We talked about so several members from the Kubernetes project, folks from Linkerd, Containerd, a bunch of folks were on that call to talk about burnout, how they handle maintainership. So in general, these topics come up. I believe Celeste will be doing one later in the year on technical writing and how to approach that. But the next one that's coming up this week is one on the Inclusive Naming Initiative. So Celeste and I will be leading breakout sessions there, or if there are topics that you are interested in having us cover. Essentially, it's kind of be an overview of what we do, an open call to come join the group, get a few more projects in here. But if there are specific things you want us to discuss, let us know.
Okay.
So Stephen, I guess just to reiterate it, so you're essentially looking for, hey, what other projects can we sort of add into this as either actively doing work in the space or want guidance to do work in the space? Is that about right?
Yeah. I think, we're still at the point where we just want more people. I think we've got a great group already. And as we firm up the work streams, it's going to be very clear where people want to align. But I think it's something that if you work in an open source project, the conversation is already happening. But it's maybe also happening internally for you, and you're in and around that and want guidance on how to move forward. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to bring people from the open source space into this effort as well.
Okay. Moving along, because we have an agenda item from Jim and Kevin Stratton from Intel, which is the work that Intel is doing in open source and kind of standards and around all of that. And I am going to give Kevin as co-host now because I understand he has some slides to share for us. Sorry, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, really quickly, just to answer Karthik's question in Zoom chat, if you are interested in multiple work streams, is that allowed? Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. You are we're happy to have you sign up for as many as you feel you are interested in and able to dedicate some effort into. I personally will be working on at least 2 of them. So.
Okay. Kevin, take it away.
Yes.
You're the co-host.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you for checking.
Great. So I will share a screen. I think this is the right one. Yes. And voila. Okay, you can see the screen.
I cannot. Dun, dun,
Not
dun.
yet.
Oh, I need to click share, and then that should do it.
Looks
There
good
we
now.
go. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thanks for having us, Jim and myself. Just a little, wanted to just share some of the things that we've been doing because we're hoping that would be helpful to this team, both in terms of some of the external stuff, as well as some thoughts on what we've done also internally. And hopefully that'll be helpful. So please interrupt me if there are any questions or comments or whatever. I think I only have 3 slides. I'm Kevin Stanton. Jim St. Ledger's here. He's the main representative at this forum. I'm a senior principal engineer. I'm involved in IEEE standards and other industry organizations. And Jim, do you want to say a word or two about yourself as well?
Yeah, just, my day job, I work at a high level within our data center group, specifically our network platforms group. So I focus on networking, and I largely do open source strategy and work around networking, edge computing, and cloud native activities. And then an asterisk of plus all kinds of other stuff that falls between the cracks for everybody else. So that's kind of my day job. So I'm involved in LF Edge. Trying to get more involved in CNCF stuff, and I see Celeste and Stephen and lots of others in those places. The Linux Foundation networking and Linux Foundation Edge as well.
All right, you're fading a little bit, Jim, but I think we got the gist of it. At least you're fading for me, and hopefully, if I'm fading, please somebody speak up. Just in terms of my involvement in this area, it was actually almost 2 years ago. I was this was Kevin's personal story about how he got involved. I was on a phone call, probably having an animated discussion about some standards that I was involved in, and in a cubicle environment here in the office back when we were in the office. Those seemed like long days ago. Afterwards, a colleague came up and said, "Hey, I don't know if you were aware of this, but you were using some terms that in an English in the English language could mean something other than the technology that you're probably talking about, especially to people who are not familiar with the particular technology that you're working on, and that could have been could be offensive to people." And I don't know what sentence I uttered, but I could imagine I was talking about master-slave in the context of a protocol. There are all kinds of ways those words could have been created, used in an English sentence in English that would be shocking to people. And so I was a bit mortified. And a week or so later, somebody, part of that team actually was creating some documentation for the standards, asked if I would stand up for making changes to our documentation for products that implemented those standards. And I considered that for a bit and said, "Yeah, I'm in. Let's do this." And that was my start into this process, which then last year took there was quite a bit more work that was done. I'll talk about a little bit about. Yeah. So that's my own little personal story. So, as I mentioned, we at Intel, we started this effort to replace and just to get it out on the table. So master slave, blacklist, whitelist were terms we decided we did not want to have in our product documentation going forward. And it was really a grassroots effort that started literally, with people writing documentation, and that went all the way up through the chains of command, and is really a cross company thing now. So last year, about 9 months ago, we commissioned 2 internal teams. We saw that this was really about technologists, people that are developing hardware or software, and we wanted to make sure that we had a senior technical ally per business unit that could represent the need for the change and answer questions as well about the logistics of making the changes. And then we quickly realized we also needed people that were involved already in standards and open source to get aligned. And so we created a team which is rather large internally, that's been working kind of behind the scenes. And I mentioned that some of the people are specialized in the sense that somebody works with universities and curriculum. And so we pulled them and they're representing that. Some people with commodity management and tools and vendors and all of these other kinds of aspects of that you wouldn't really think, but as we spoke with people, we realized that these terms were just really prevalent. And some of the groups actually added other terms that they're specialized for the factory or whatever. So I'll talk a little more about what we did, but in terms of internal communications, we found that it was important to have an opportunity for people who were being asked to make changes to terms they'd used, myself included, for decades, why that was appropriate to do. So we left lots of time for Q&A. We had some actual almost full Q&A sessions among engineers and others in the company, and then created a central website with resources for employees. There was a company-wide article and so on. So I'll talk a little more about the standards in open source, but for in terms of collateral, and this is, I think, one area that this team could really play an important role in, is collecting collateral from companies. And there are many I know, including my own, that have developed collateral, and trying to bring those together into and consolidate. So, for example, we have a document which is available to everyone that recommends certain terms as replacement terms for various situations. So if you're talking about, a replication versus something that is anyway. So there are a number of terms, and so we have a table that we use, and I think having such a, I'm not moving my pointer, having such a consolidated list would be really helpful. We actually thought about at one point just going to the Wikipedia page, which talks about master slave, and that it's those are not inclusive terms, and just start editing there and invite other people to do the same, and that could be the consensus mechanism. But I think this could be a more structured way of doing that. And then because often, especially hardware products, but software as well, or let's say software implementing something that is defined as a hardware spec, like I2C, for example, a low level, or an Ethernet or whatever. We created a policy statement, which was then used for standards development organizations and other industry bodies that they could adopt, so that then the standards that for the open source projects that were within that governance structure could point to something when they said we're going to make this change. And I've been involved in IEEE standard 1588, IEEE, the Precision Time Protocol, which is PTP4L is the open source implementation. And there was a proposal some time ago to make a change. And in one of the profiles for 1588, there was a lot of discussion. And at the end of the day, the answer was, you're not allowed to make a change in the working group unless it's for technical reasons. And so they were actually told you can't make a change. And so the necessity of having a policy within the governance structure was then, okay, that's what needs to happen. And that's something that's in progress. And the policy statement's been adopted by a few organizations. We also found that having a liaison from one organization to another saying, hey, we're using your standard, and we'd like you to make these changes, has also been really helpful. And there have been a number of those sent around among the 65 or so folks that are involved in these external standards and SDOs. And then when it comes to documentation for products, there's a need for translation. And so that's another collateral, a bit of collateral that we created. So if you're translating this term into that language, choose this replacement term in that language for internationalization. So let me pause there and just see if there are any questions or comments.
Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned the document that you'd already established. Is that link already made available to this group somewhere in our set of documentation?
So it is not. So what so there's stuff that I could share today, and there's what I was thinking we could do is if we were ready in this forum to start discussing and collecting those, then I will go through the process of getting that to you. So far, the only collateral that we created that is been published publicly is the policy statement that's been adopted by Insights. It's on its way to the ANSI standards body, and the replacement terms also I can pull those up and show you all, but I could get a more formal more formal submission if that was thought to be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much.
Yeah, Kevin, when you're ready, for the things that you can submit or the things that you're willing to share, you can send them to the mailing list, and we can kind of start a discussion there. And for the things that you're not able to share yet, we can talk about that too. Okay.
Yeah, and I think we can share everything. It's just a matter of making sure that it's not just going into that it's going to be used, and I didn't want to have a discussion so much on that level of detail today. Is also, but I'll show you what we do have at high level.
Yeah, that actually kind of segues nicely into the last thing on the agenda, which I think I'm going to do asynchronously as opposed to with the group. So I will create a GitHub discussion and then I will email the Google group. So please look out for that, which is it's time to start brainstorming what we would like to deliver and how. And it's also, I think, time to start collating amongst ourselves who has resources that they are looking to publish and make public or can publish and make public, and effectively start building a bit of a work backlog for ourselves and the work streams. So FYI, look out for that later today, because I would much rather give a bit more time to this discussion. Thank you.
And I can, yeah, go ahead. And then I'll flash up I have a screenshot of the replacement terms. I'd be happy I'll just flash that up in a second here. But go ahead.
Just a quick question. I'm a worker bee at Livermore Labs, but very interested in this topic area. And the question I have is, it sounds like the effort there was, started essentially from the top down. People saw the value in this. And the question is, how's the reception been from the rank and file employee base? Do you have a sense of that at this point? Have you had to deal with a lot of resistance? Yeah, so it's a really important question. And we wanted this to be not, I'll just speak for myself, but I think I speak for the core team. I wanted this to be a opt-in that we, as opposed to a mandate from the top down. So that's one of the reasons that we recruited, I think 25 or 30 senior technical people, senior fellows, principal engineers, senior principal engineers from each group, and ask them to lead a discussion. Here are our values. We want everyone to bring their best to work every day. And we want everyone to feel included. Here are some places where we're not living up to those. Ideals. And here's some specific things that we can do as a result. And then took questions and in some cases followed up with folks behind the scenes. As far as reception. I'd say some people take longer than others to
For example, I was not on board immediately. I thought, I don't know if that's really necessary. And it took me a few weeks to think through it actually, before I said that I was in. And I think, I'm hopeful that as we continue having the discussions, people see that this is not 1984. I think that they'll come around.
Yeah, Mark, I'll share one other perspective. So, our software engineering, software developers, architects, et cetera, are extremely global, right? Every major country you can probably think of, we've got a pretty decent presence, and their cultural backgrounds are as varied. And what I found so far is that there isn't really resistance to it, but there are folks who don't really understand why it's a priority. And a fair amount of the work, you'll see in the middle there, internal communications, right? Letting people know why this work is important, how it fits in. And if you followed things like Black Lives Matter, sure, it started in the US, but it clearly has strong support in places like the UK, France, and in many other locations, just to state a few. Beyond that, there are other countries that say, yeah, we've got similar issues, and they're not the same issues you have in the States, such as master slave, but there are our own issues. And I think somewhere downstream, those kind of localized challenges need to get added to the list of things to go look at and work on and decide, hey, are there other terminologies that we might view as neutral that other countries would view as offensive, either directly or perhaps translated into localized languages? So for sure, work to do there. And I think education and communication is a core part of the work, not only just going into projects and changing the language.
Hey,
Thanks
Kevin
so
and
much.
Mark, this is Andre Pellet from Dell
Thanks,
Technologies.
Celeste, for letting me ask that.
Hang on, we've got a few people chiming in simultaneously. Like, if you can, raise your hand in Zoom chat, and then we can pick the next person.
I think it was both Mark and Andre at the same time.
Who's next?
Mark, it's all, you can go first.
Mark, you raised it. How about
Oh,
you go jump first?
I'm sorry. All I was saying is thank you for sharing, and thank you, Celeste, for letting me ask. Thanks very much.
Okay, Andre?
Yes, hi, I'm from Dell Technologies. I was interested in terms of reading out to senior leadership, really two parts. Do you have kind of senior leadership on board and helping to sponsor this? And if so, what type of information in terms of progress that are you sharing upstream just to have that reporting out?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I found is that leaders tend to get this faster or immediately, or so, for example, recruiting the 30 or so senior technical folks was not actually hard at all. I think every single person I contacted, either immediately or before we were finished talking, said, yeah, I'm in. So I think going up, as you go up the management chain, people more are universally they're on board. That so far that we've seen, at least. And as far as the report, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add, Kevin, what I think has been really important, Andre, is to have some very senior technical leadership putting their voices behind this. So it includes vice presidents, it includes fellows, which is, in Intel, it's maybe equivalent of distinguished engineers at other companies, but our senior most technical ranks have put their voices behind this and come out publicly, both raising their hand saying, hey, I'm working on this. This is important work. We need to put a focus and emphasis on this. That shows people it's the visible instantiation of what's a priority versus just putting it on a list and then not talking about it.
I was going to ask a question around the having a senior technical ally bit in that, which is, do you think your efforts would have been successful without your technical allies?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I can't predict that. But the way I look at it, this is also, you could say, a something that the technical community, a problem we created, and the technical community should step up and be the solution to the problem we created, whether it was intentionally or not. It's a problem that we have to own, right, and to solve. But as far as yeah, we felt like it was the right thing to do, both in terms of showing people the technical community was behind this, as opposed to just it being some random mandate from on high. We thought that was really important. And again, the technical people that I contacted were all, you know, they were all many were excited, and they were all eventually you know, on board after they heard the rationale. And hearing the rationale is important, and having those discussions. I didn't mention here, but we also reached out to employee groups, several employee groups, to get their perspective and their guidance, and was joined by someone representing the one employee group that was really important and really educational for me, as well, as I had dialogue back and forth about, you know, why are these the terms, for example. Someone had asked a couple minutes ago about communicating progress, and what we so just so you know, I think I've got it here. So in terms of the standards that were the first place we focused, so I think we have we've changed PCI, display port, USB, Bluetooth. Actually, Wi-Fi was already clean. We're working on some of the other interfaces, and then there are a number of other open source projects. And Jim has, you know, we can provide a list of those. In fact, let me go to my next slide, which is some thoughts. And let me just, you know, quickly go through these, and then we can get to where I was about to go. So we started with a couple terms. I think having a focus and just continue. We collect a list. We have a long list of other terms people have suggested. We have that list. Having a criteria then for what would be next is important. But focusing on let's get something through, and then we can expand the scope. I think that's important. Having a list of replacement terms was really helpful. And then in terms of progress, as both having a list of things that need to change, and then collecting and publishing those changes as they're made, creates a bit of a momentum toward the changes, and selecting certain terms because other organizations have selected the same term for the same kind of meaning. And that that coalescing is also really helpful. And I think that this team collecting and publishing those would publicly would be really helpful. We'd be happy to, you know, make our list available, some of them that I mentioned, and many others as well.
Kevin, this is Jessica Church from F5. I had a question. We're obviously going through the same progress here that everyone on this team, on this Zoom is doing. I'm curious, like when you say you collect and publish changes, there's tens of thousands of instances of these words. Like, how are you tracking that, and who does the input so that you are tracking it? Because I'm sure you're not the one that's sort of chasing up tens of thousands of changes. Yeah,
it's a really good question. So, and this is a continuing discussion. So the easy but incomplete answer is Zephyr decided they're going to make the change, for example. And I think that's actually true. Okay, so that's number one. And so we track that. And then the question though is, so when is that done, and how is progress made? And do you go back to all past branches and releases, or do you only go forward?
Yeah.
So those are some of the bigger questions. What we've decided is that let's get agreement that everything moving forward is going to be using the new terms. We have actually guidance. It's not in the snapshot that I'll show here, but it'll be part of the fuller guidance on what if there's an API versus a non-API that includes the term, and how do you manage that change? That obviously that's challenging, right? But what we track so far has been these organizations have said they're going to make the change. And if there's a release where they've said that they will have made the changes then we publish that so that people can be expecting that and working toward it.
Okay, so you had a consistent parameter of current to in production changes, nothing historical. Because
yeah,
we're asking, in our case, we actually let the work streams dictate the MVP process and determine like how far can you go back, what actually needs to happen going forward and back, and to what extent. So I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just sort of trying to learn along the way.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've said is let's do this moving forward. And if you go back and open some code or document for some reason to make a change, make these changes, especially if it's documentation. It's relatively it's not like code that has to recompile. It's documentation, and then leaving it up to the teams to decide what's the right thing to do. Where there's a reference to some technical term externally, like in a standard, we also have some guidance that is, and then the follower, parentheses, referred to as the slave in such and such a standard, close parenthesis. And we'll have a mapping in one place in a document to the technical term, and then use the replacement term thereafter. And then work toward upstreaming the change into the other document.
Okay, thanks.
Let me just quickly go to replacement language guidance. So we deprecate master slave. We have primary, secondary as the default. So if you don't know what else to do, use that. And then we have some other main, secondary, subordinate, and where you might use that versus primary replica, et cetera, same with blacklist, whitelist. Then there's the rest, there's more documentation about if it's an API and so on, guidance. And then the policy statement, which is a form of this, I think is in front of, or will be in front of ANSI soon, and it's been used by a number of governing bodies. That's just a principle of inclusive terminology. There are examples, but it's more general than just those terms. And then that provides you could say air cover for people to make the change without debating whether the change is needed at the working group level.
This is awesome. This is really, really cool to see. We're coming up on time, so I want to ask, does anybody else have any last questions for Kevin? Andre.
I'll just follow up with Kevin offline. That's great.
Okay, perfect. No, this is really, really good. And I think this group is definitely interested in seeing if we can take some of what you've done internally public, because I think you put a lot of thought into it.
So quick note that you all have, in addition to the mailing list or GitHub discussions, you all have Slack to chat more synchronously now. So please, afford yourselves that opportunity to hop into one of the work stream channels and start populating it with all this wonderful content. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be useful. We'll get what we can to you, and I think there shouldn't be any barriers to anything that'll be useful.
Yeah. I will end this note on, I just sent out an email to the working list with a link to a GitHub discussion, which you will also find in the notes. We're about ready to start deciding what work we want to do and what kinds of documents we want to intake as a group. So I'd like to get all of our ideas in one place, and I would like that place to be the GitHub discussion. So please participate. That would be very, very lovely. I will probably spend some time this week going through the mailing list and pulling out ideas which have already been proposed. TLDR, sign up for work streams, sign up for Slack, and give us your ideas, because I think we're about ready to start moving. Anything else from anybody else? No, just Stephen looking excited,
Just
which
excited,
is very on
just
brand
excitement.
for him. All right. That's about it. I am going to stop the recording in 3, 2, 1.